What's going on, everyone? The Anthony Davis injury definitely puts the Lakers in a bit of a situation, right? Rob Pelinka was in the process of finding a trade, but now the question is, does Rob Pelinka look at AD's injury and say, okay, let's wait, let's see how this team performs without Anthony Davis. We can rattle off some wins, then yeah, maybe I'll go make a trade. Or does he look at this as like, hey, this is it. He's out for a month. We're already so far behind. Very likely we're not going to, even if we made a trade, not going to be good enough to compete in the standings. And then we end up falling flat. And it's like we traded everything away to be a play-in team or a team that misses the playoffs entirely. Or the other side is, oh no, like Anthony Davis is only going to miss a month. Let's go do a deal that we would do otherwise. And then that way, when Anthony Davis comes back, then we're off to the races and hopefully we can, climb the standings and then get into the playoffs and then trust our stars to lead us to a championship. It's really going to come down to how Rob Pelinka perceives this injury. And obviously, the Patrick Beverley, Kendrick Nunn move is a move that the Lakers are currently shopping along with the first round pick and trying to find some sort of deal that can elevate this team. But the best way to get depth and assets would be Russell Westbrook. Now, look, you can't just trade Russ just to trade Russ. I know a lot of people really still want Russell Westbrook traded. A lot of people look at his salary and his production and stuff, although I kind of disagree with that. I mean, one, his salary isn't his fault. I mean, the Lakers traded for him. He didn't go and trade for himself. His role isn't what the role that people want it to be, right? People want Russ to be like a number one guy on this team. They want like OKC Russ, something like that. But the thing is, that's not his role. He's not even the third guy on this team. He's the sixth man, right? And he's averaging nearly a triple-double as the sixth man. He's equating for points. He's a big part of AD's sort of resurgence, right? Him and AD have this chemistry, and he's kind of evolved into this playmaker, this defensive playmaker. And Russ is a guy that is very valuable for the Lakers right now, and his value to other teams hasn't changed. All the teams that are still rumored are the same teams, and they don't want Russ for Russ, right? If Russ had like a $20 million salary, then I think there'd be no shortage of suitors trying to trade for him as a sixth man. I mean, it would be perfect for so many teams, especially contenders, to have Russ off the bench as a sixth man, and if he had a reasonable salary, but he doesn't, although that could be beneficial for the Lakers. And it begs the question now, probably more than ever, of does Rob Pelinka look for a trade, look for a move using Russell Westbrook to try to get as much depth and talent as possible to kind of weather Anthony Davis? Now, the Lakers up until this point have won 1.5 games without AD, beat the Wizards, they beat the Nuggets, right? And tonight they play the Suns. We'll see how that goes. And their schedule does kind of lighten up towards the end of this month and then in the beginning of January. So that helps. And so maybe the Lakers could weather the storm. Maybe Russ can kind of step up and provide a little more of a scoring punch. But again, that's not really his role. Like, the Lakers don't want him to be a 30-point a game guy, right? Because if he does that, then he's kind of doing the opposite of what they're looking for. They want him to be, 10 to 15 points a game, 8 to 10 rebounds, 8 to 10 assists, right? So he's giving you that production. He's playing defense. He's playing both sides of the ball, all of those things. But Russ is the one contract, if you were to go all in, right? If you were going to make a move, that Russell Westbrook is the guy that can get you that move. And there are some questions beyond Anthony Davis that you have to ask. One, do you see Russell Westbrook for your future? Do you see him as a guy that you would re-sign and keep around? Two, is there a deal out there that makes sense to trade Russell Westbrook to get those pieces that would be for your future, right? And three, does Russell Westbrook even want to be here? You might want to re-sign him, right? There may be a deal on the table, but you're like, hey, we'd rather keep Russ and have him off the bench as a valuable piece going forward. But Russ, does he want that? He knows that you guys have been trying to trade him the whole time. Are you really going to pay him the money that he wants? Like, let's say the Lakers are willing to pay him, 10 to 15 million a year. Is another team willing to pay him the same amount of money, but in a starting role, right? Wouldn't he rather have a starting role? Or if the team's willing to pay him a little more, wouldn't he want to go and get that money? So there are a lot of questions that Rob Pelinka has to weigh. But Russell Westbrook, if you wanted to push your chips to the table, go all in, and hope that you could get enough depth, get enough talent for now and the future. It can't just be a play right now. I don't believe the Lakers should operate on a trade as if Anthony Davis is injured and will continue to be injured, because he maybe come back sooner, maybe it takes later, until you can actually get confirmation of like, okay, AD is ready to go. He's been healthy for the most part this season outside of this little injury. And, some of this is probably just a cautionary thing because reports said it wasn't majorly severe. So it's probably just like, hey, we don't want to, like Anthony Davis maybe has a bone bruise or something in his foot. And they're just like, hey, we don't want to jeopardize the entirety of the season with Anthony Davis going forward. So begs the question, do you do like, say, the Pacers deal? Now, obviously, there haven't been a lot of word and a lot of talks of the Pacers deal. And the issue also is right now the price is likely higher, right? So like, let's say it was, an unprotected first for Miles Turner, right? A lot of people want the Pacers deal, Buddy Hield, Miles Turner, get a big man, all that stuff. And maybe it works out great, maybe it doesn't. But regardless, right? They wanted 2 first-round picks for these 2 guys for Russell Westbrook. Well, now what is it? Because any move is going to be perceived as desperation, right? You're desperate because you don't have Anthony Davis. And that's why the Lakers continuing to win is so important, because now you can operate from a standpoint of like, we aren't desperate. We want, if the deal's right, we'll make the deal, but we're not just going to give everything away. And look, we're still winning even without AD. So that's why that's important. And like a move for like, the Pacers deal, or maybe they look at the Spurs deal, which in my opinion, I prefer over the Pacers deal, because I think you get 3 guys and you get a potential 4th guy for Russell Westbrook, right? Because you could get, for Russ, you could get Josh Richardson, Jakob Poeltl, Doug McDermott. All 3 guys that could be starting level guys, could come off the bench, could do whatever. Also, the key with Jakob Poeltl is he could come in and start, but when AD comes back, if you want AD to continue to play the 5, then Jakob could come off the bench. I mean, he's came off the bench for the Spurs. He's came off the bench on several occasions, right? And he's a guy that's not going to demand what Miles Turner would likely demand. If you're going and trading for Miles Turner, you're going to have to pay him. You're going to have to pay Jakob Poeltl too, but Miles Turner's probably going to cost a lot more than Poeltl. And on top of that, Miles Turner, he's a guy that wants to start. He wants to play the center. He wants to be that guy and prove that he is one of the best centers in the league. Where Jakob Poeltl, he's just happy to play basketball in many ways, right? He's a team guy. He wants to do whatever. Like even the bubble year, right? You had Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee. That was great. And they played the 5 spots, but there were nights where they had DNPs. And come the playoff time, there were nights where they didn't even really play, or they played limited minutes, or they came off the bench. Anthony Davis closed games, all that stuff. Are you going to be able to do that with Turner? You could probably do that with Jakob Poeltl, right? Jakob Poeltl, he's just going to want to win. He's going to be a team guy. He's also a great passer that you could help. He's a low post threat, a solid interior defender, all of those things. He doesn't provide the shooting that Miles Turner does, but he does provide a lot of things that Miles Turner doesn't. They're 2 very different centers, but you're also getting more depth, right? You're getting Josh Richardson, who could be our like KCP, that 3-and-D shooting guard, small forward. You're getting Doug McDermott, who could be our, Buddy Hield type shooter that could be hugely beneficial. But you also get a trade exception, which is huge, because then you could use that trade exception to go get another piece, or maybe 2, a player that wants out, something like that. You take that and then you go use that to go get something else. If you get Jakob Poeltl, then you'd get a trade exception for around like 13 to 15 million. But if you don't take Jakob Poeltl, then you get about a $21 million trade exception. So that could be the difference too. Maybe you don't take Poeltl, and maybe you just get Josh Richardson, Doug McDermott, and then you go trade for Miles Turner and you try to work out a multi-team deal. The only way I really see the Lakers being, like, if they were to go all in and they wanted to be a legit contender, you're probably going to have to make multiple moves. So if you traded Russ for, say, a Spurs deal, and then you still were able to maintain a first, then you could take Patricl, Beverley, Kendrick, Nunn, and then maybe go give that unprotected first for like Bojan Bogdanovic. Or maybe the Pistons would prefer the trade exception, right? Maybe you could get a bigger trade exception and go the $21 million trade exception and then absorb, Bay and, Boyan or whatever. Like, whatever. Work it out and figure out what do they want. Would you prefer the trade exception and maybe a first? Or do you want the players, the salary? Like, how do you want it? Trade exceptions are valuable to some teams, because it gives them flexibility and it gives them an option to go get a piece themselves or to absorb salary or whatever, to try to recoup assets, especially like a rebuilding team. So there's value there. Or even like the Hornets deal. I mean, the Hornets deal might be another arguably better deal, right? Because the one thing the Lakers really need more than anything is wing depth, right? And with a Hornets deal, you get that, right? If you could get, say, PJ Washington, Kelly Oubre, and Terry Rozier, right? And you're moving off Russ. You basically have your point guard locked up. You have your 4 and 5 locked up. Well, now you have your 3 locked up too. And now you're a more complete team. You're a deeper team. You got scoring, you got shooting, you got defense. You got everything you need to lead the charge. You got depth. You could probably ride out the storm. And then when AD comes back, now you're probably a contender, right? And so those are the things that the Lakers are really going to have to maybe further explore. They're not really interested in trading Russ just to trade Russ, which is, again, understandable, and I'm all for that. I don't want to see them trade Russ just to trade Russ. But with AD's injury, the question is now a bigger question of, like, do we trade Russ to go get the depth we need to weather the storm? Or is Russ still too valuable for his playmaking, setting up Thomas Bryant and all of that? I mean, that's a real question too. And it's something that Rob Pelinka's really going to have to evaluate and really kind of take in consideration. Do you keep Russell Westbrook and the production he's giving you? Do you think that that's enough with what you have to continue to perform and win games and weather this until Anthony Davis comes back? And then when Anthony Davis comes back, boom, you're a contender. Maybe try to move Patrick Beverley, Kendrick Nunn in a first, maybe throw in Damian Jones, whatever you got to do. Maybe bring in a Hassan Whiteside or a Mo Harkless just momentarily until you can figure something out. The Lakers have options. The concern is the asking price for teams higher now because of the Anthony Davis injury? Or can you get a reasonable deal? And is there a real argument for going the depth route? Because these are all deals that you would probably make even if Anthony Davis was available, right? Like the Spurs deal, you can make an argument for that with Anthony Davis available. The Hornets deal, you can make an argument for that even with Anthony Davis available. So I'd like to see, if the Lakers are to make a trade that makes sense as if Anthony Davis was playing, rather than making a deal, because you see that with teams all the time, right? Their star player goes down, they panic, and they try to get like production that is the same, but then when their player comes back, it's like, well, now we don't really need this guy, right? So now what? Or, like you're trying to make it work, and sometimes it doesn't work, and you're just like, we traded for this guy for, and it's like, now it's clunky or whatever. Like, that's what you don't want to do. Go get the pieces you were going to get regardless, and then when Anthony Davis comes back, hopefully you're off to the races, and now you're a contender. Hopefully you have enough depth and enough talent to kind of ride it out between now and then. Still have LeBron James, right? And he's still playing like LeBron James in many ways and really helping lead this charge. So hopefully that can continue. But I just thought that this was a question that should be asked. And of course, I passed that question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section below. What do you think? Think the Lakers, Russell Westbrook trade is more needed now because Anthony Davis is missing a month? Do you think, no, it's not, still the same scenario? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, good, bad, ugly, somewhere in between, I'd love to hear them. Let me know down in the comments section below.